I would like to start our program with the definitions of a market economy and its correlation with the planned state economy.
Market economy is defined as a set of economic relations in which governance towards economic life, the decision about what, how, and for whom to produce, are realized by themselves through competition, supply and demand, free prices, profits and losses. In the current dominant economic literature, it is maintained that the market economy makes it possible to effectively use resources to form the optimal structure of the national economy, the optimal spectrum of goods and services with minimal costs of production and circulation, and maximum profit. The market economy implies the absence of state intervention in economic life. The task of transitioning to the market economy is proclaimed in our country as the central one. The antipode of the market economy is recognized as an economy based on the absolutization of state planning of economic processes. Our country is constantly being swayed between these two equally unacceptable developmental guidelines. To block socially useful mechanisms of governance, there are two schools of economics: market economists and economists planners, whose goal is to swing the pendulum of non-understanding in one direction or the other. In reality, the plan and the market are not mutually exclusive, but mutually supplementary instruments. We will have a future if the economy becomes planned with a market mechanism well tuned to fulfill the plan. Let's refer to the opinion of one of the true economists who do not belong to the economic cohort, the author of the Japanese economic miracle, S. Okita, expressed by him shortly before his death to Professor A. Dinkiewicz. You often hear that the transition to market mechanisms proclaimed in the USSR and the countries of Eastern Europe is a convincing proof of the superiority of a market economy over a centrally planned one. I believe that this is a delusion. The problem is to connect, reconcile, combine into a single mechanism the beginning of these two systems, to find an effective way to combine market mechanisms and state planning and regulation.
Do you mean to say that the practice of planned directive governance in the USSR was justified?
Yes, but only to a certain extent. In everything, a sense of measure is needed. And in this lies the secret. The thing is that centralized, directive-addressed governance has fundamental limitations on the scale and degree of detailedness of processes. Where it, in the USSR in its time, exhausted its capabilities and reserves, it needed not to be destroyed, but to be supplemented by the market, the regulation mechanism of which should be turned towards developing and strengthening the positions of the plan. However, the reformers of Russia overlooked this problem.
I get the impression that in these matters, we not only make a particular mistake, but also fall into some kind of vicious system of use on governance.
Yes, indeed. This particular example can most vividly demonstrate that general algorithmics, that methodology, on the basis of which there is a blocking of the right, holistic world understanding in our country. On any significant issue, a false alternative has been thrown to the people in order to conceal the truth, access to which is available not on TV and in newspapers, but only at the level of initiates. These equally false choices imposed on the people include plan, market, capitalism, socialism. Well-being is connected not with the form of ownership, but with the financial climate, determined by the size of the loan interest, the sufficiency of the money supply, the ratio of one's own and other people's means of payment, and so on. Integration into the world economy, the Iron Curtain. Democracy, dictatorship. Materialism, idealism. Godlessness, worship of churches, rituals, and prayer rugs. Democrats, patriots. Only the patriotism of Zhuganov and company is allowed on TV, creating empty emotions, parasitizing on people's grief. As for the bluff about self-regulation of the market, then, among other things, it provokes the promotion of absolute mediocrities and idiots, direct agents of competing transnational companies, into the government structures. In accordance with this theory, nothing is required of them except a carefree belief in the omnipotence of the market, and their presence in government structures does not oblige them to anything. Everything can be written off on the element of the market, including 1,000-fold depreciation of money and the introduction of alien means of payment into the circulation of money, destruction of high-tech complexes and deliberate destruction of mines, and much more.
Could you name the most significant unpublished goals and negative consequences of situations when the market solves all problems by itself?
The main objective of imposing the ungovernable element of the market is to introduce in this situation a system of usurious suppression of productive labor. The astronomically high loan interest, unheard of in the history of mankind, explained to the crowd by the element of the market, unidirectionally siphons financial solvency from society into the corporation of usurers. And even if the representatives of this corporation are incredibly stupid in organizing production, then a simple increase in the loan interest allows them to personally dominate, both in the sphere of finance and in the sphere of consumption, shifting all costs and suffering onto the laboring people. This applies not only to Russia, but also to all other countries embarking on a path of market economy. In this algorithmics, mankind is steadily approaching a global biospheric, ecological, and social catastrophe. Market self-regulation focuses primarily on super profits that do not take into account the destruction of the biosphere. They are earned primarily on the satisfaction of antisocial, degradational needs, drugs, pornography, weapons, alcohol, and its most socially dangerous variety, beer, tobacco. As an illustration of the success of the market algorithmics, the average person is cited examples of the life of the United States, which until a certain time live like this, since they are allowed to print paper, called money, throughout 2 generations. They are allowed not to repay debts. $32 trillion are the debts of the state, corporations, and individuals. And they are allowed to prosper at the expense of the ruin of other countries and peoples. But at the same time, the appalling poverty of most other countries of the market economy remains in the background. From Colombia and South Africa to India, where the living conditions of a significant part of the population do not exceed those of a stray dog. This all is not a coincidence, but a natural result, from which it's impossible to disconnect within the framework of the market mechanisms of the West, a degradational, parasitic, suicidal civilization, which is now an obvious danger for all mankind. In the system of supranational governance, each country that has taken the bait of integration into the world market economy has a definite role to play. The more servilely we will work out the recipes of introduction of the market economy, the faster we will come to a full-scale fulfillment of our mission in the global division of labor. Russia as a pan-European raw material industry and a dump of worldwide scale.
I would like to talk about the problems of the socially useful economy and its alternatives.
The economy is divided into 2 fundamentally different types. It can teach how an entrepreneur or structure can feather their nests, regardless of social well-being, or prioritize the formation of a life of well-being for the majority of residents, the strengthening and development of their genetics. In the latter case, the economy distinguishes between degradational parasitic and demographically conditioned components in the entire spectrum of the needs of society. The first of them is not prognosable in principle, is conditioned by the viciousness of people, perversions, and the absence of their sense of measure. The satisfaction of such needs leads to the oppression of the genetics of man and his kind, or the people around him, and the biosphere as a habitat. As for biospherically acceptable, demographically conditioned needs, they are strictly and unambiguously related to the number and age structure of residents, and therefore precisely planned and prognosable. Attempts by the West to investigate economic processes in the line of pure science, outside of sociology, politics, and raviousness, led to the formation of the social science, economics. American textbooks and our encyclopedias define it as the science of using limited resources in order to maximize the satisfaction of the unlimited material needs of society that cannot be prognosed. Unlike these non-subject domain studies, go there, don't know where, in a socially useful economy, through precisely fixed, demographically conditioned needs, a vector, a list, of objectives of state governance is unambiguously determined. The satisfaction of other objectives is not blocked by administrative dictatorship, but is removed from the category of state problems into the list of problems of some vicious individuals.
What does such a division of needs give for economic practice?
The singling out of demographically conditioned needs is actually the fixation of the objectives of socially useful governance. And then, fixing the vector of objectives of socially useful governance enables you to move on to the formation of balances of production and development of every administrative territorial unit, federal district, region, district, both in physical and in financial accounting of products. Mathematically, such a balance is described by a system of linear equations reflecting the processes of product exchange of every sector with all other sectors and with the living population. The meaning of the search for an optimization solution of such a system of equations boils down to ensuring that every sector produces as much as it needs for all other related sectors, intermediate product, raw materials, components, and to directly satisfying the demographically conditioned needs of the population. Since the latter are strictly fixed, the system has a solution, in contrast to the case, the more the better. In the course of solving this problem, taxes and grants are calculated strictly mathematically as correction factors for products produced in excess, local taxes, and for products produced in short supply, local grants. This is precisely what the possibilities of purpose-oriented state regulation of the market economy are reduced to. The plan and the market, in a reasonable state, are never opposed to each other, but on the contrary, are interconnected elements of a single economic mechanism. One of them refers to structural, and the second to structureless methods of governance. Such approaches to the formation of a balanced development of territorial administrative complexes are not revelations. For the development of such approaches in his time, Vasily Leontiev received a Nobel Prize. However, the main motive for its award, in our opinion, is the fact that in order to please the West, he substantiated the impossibility of an unambiguous solution. The difference with our approach is only that Leontiev did not come to an understanding of the possibilities of tuning the state mechanism to satisfy precisely fixed, demographically conditioned needs, and that is why he came to the conclusion that it is impossible to solve the system of input-output balance equations due to the uncertainty of consumption volumes.
And how to move from dry mathematical formulas to the practice of real governance.
After the mechanisms of regional governance have been formed, there appear grounds for real state governance in the highest echelon of power, which in its essence boils down to bringing together the excess and deficit of all products and services produced in the regions into a single balance. On the basis of these data, also strictly mathematically, national taxes on goods and services presented in excess and grants on those in deficit are calculated. After the completion of the formation of the national balance of sectors, initial data are obtained for the mathematical calculation of customs duties and the introduction of a duty-free regime for the supply of goods of a national deficit character. Customs duties imposed on goods produced in the country should not only create healthy competitive conditions, but also be targeted in a protectionist way towards the development of the corresponding sector of domestic production in order to form the prospects for its entry into a competitive level or reprofiling for other production. If the import of a particular product is connected with the inevitable bankruptcy of certain large enterprises or entire industries, for example poultry farming, then the amount of funds received from customs duties should exceed the total national damage connected with the restructuring of production, with the creation of an equivalent number of new jobs, unemployment benefits, and so on. In short, the essence of the proposed algorithm can be expressed by the following formula. From integrated, technologically enclosed agro-industrial complexes to the balanced development of regions in the name of creating a single national economic complex on the principle of a self-sufficient state superconcern. However, such a state should have principles of arrangement and governance adequate to the economic essence.